This episode goes out to all the people who are juggling multiple responsibilities, especially all of you parents out there, especially the mompreneurs. I have a very special guest on today's show today. Her name is Damona Hoffman. She is the host of the I Make a Living podcast. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about how to network in this virtual environment, how to build your audience. We're talking about all things mompreneur. If you are busy and trying to juggle a busy schedule, you are going to love this episode. Plus, we talk about a lot of other things. Let's dive in to today's episode. Before we do, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast. And if you like it, make sure that you like this video and share it with your friends. All right, let's dive into this amazing interview with Damona. Hey there, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have a very special guest, Damona Hoffman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You are the host of the I Make a Living podcast, and I'm excited to have you here to talk about entrepreneurship and your journey and all the things. So before we kind of dive in, why don't you tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey? A little tongue-tied today.
I can relate because as an entrepreneur, I wear a lot of hats and my brain is always in a million different places. My primary business is as a dating coach, but I also think of myself as much as a dating coach as a content creator as well. My background is actually, I worked in corporate media for a long time. I was a programming executive at CBS and Paramount and NBC. And I left it all behind to start my own business as a dating coach,
Awesome.
which was not part of the plan, but has led me to a lot of really exciting opportunities. And I love that I now get to host the I Make a Living podcast by FreshBooks because it gives me the opportunity to talk to other entrepreneurs. As you know, entrepreneurship can be a very isolated,
Totally.
weird environment to work in. And as somebody that came from corporate media where I was always collaborating with other creatives, it's been really nice to have now, this is my third season on the show, to be able to have a creative team that I get to work with and other entrepreneurs that I can learn from.
That's amazing. Well, I love that you're a dating coach because before the pre-show, we're not going to really talk about dating, but I used to always talk about how sales is like dating on my podcast for a very long time. But I loved it because you had an interview with an expert about attachment styles. And we just kind of caught up about different attachment styles and went down a rabbit hole about my horrible dating history until I met my current boyfriend, Jason, who is awesome. But
yeah, we've all been there. And actually, it's funny because sometimes I have been asked to talk to corporations about the skills that I help people build in dating and how they apply to business. So it's totally applicable. You're right on the money. And I've always said, date like it's your job. So maybe do your job like it's dating is the next evolution of that.
Exactly. So you're, as an entrepreneur yourself, you know how crazy things have gone. I mean, this last year with COVID, pandemic, and natural disasters, and pretty much like felt like the world was crumbling for a lot of people. This is really a new phase in life. So what are some of the ways that you've learned to thrive and survive with all the craziness that's going on in the world and keep your business going?
Yes, it has been really crazy. I'm in a unique position because it was a little bit of what they say, luck is opportunity plus timing.
Yep.
I already was working from home pre-pandemic. I had built out my studio for podcasting 2 or 3 years prior to the pandemic. So actually for me, I was well positioned to be able to step into this void when
Mm-hmm.
people were still figuring out how to use virtual tools. I was like, "Oh, honey, I got this."
I
Like I
got it.
was
Yep.
already ready. And on top of that, as a love coach, this is a time when people are really craving connection. So
Mm-hmm.
I've also had a lot of new people seeking me out in that respect. Just because it's wild out there and
Yeah.
it does really take a different skill set and a different just a different mindset as well to be able to still make a connection in the current world. But through I Make a Living, I've gotten to talk to a lot of different entrepreneurs who've had to navigate this pandemic in many different ways. People who were doing live events and made their living that way, who've had to pivot to completely different business models to be able to stay afloat. I've talked to people who've literally relied on the PPP uh, program to be able to make payroll and figure out how to sustain their business. And then I've also talked to folks who, like me, were in a position where their business was actually situated perfectly for a pandemic, if we ever could have seen it coming, and have figured out how to kind of amplify their efforts using the new tools and technology and systems that have become available to us.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we have a coaching program over here called Momentum. And part of that program is that we do 2 live events a year. And we were already streaming them to people who didn't want to come to the live event, like they just didn't want to, travel or whatever, virtually. So we kind of had that dialed in, and now we're running them like only as virtual events until it's kind of safe, I guess, to do in-person events yet. But it definitely was a pivot, and it's like a shift. What I'm more curious about, though, I mean, this is totally off topic, but I'm just fascinated by it because, like, how do people date, like, if they aren't in a relationship, like
It's
during a
so
pandemic? Because,
possible.
like, everyone's afraid of germs. Like, you can't even, like, if you do meet someone up with someone in person, you can't even like make out with them.
It's still possible, as you see, it's still possible to run many businesses throughout the
Yeah.
pandemic. It's sort of the same. I've had to help my clients develop a COVID dating safety plan
Hmm.
where they already know what their boundaries are. And I think this is really helpful for anyone
Yeah.
navigating this period of the pandemic where numbers are very different in different places, restrictions are very different in different
Hmm.
places, people's comfort level is very different.
Yeah.
So if you already know where you would meet someone, how how quickly you would share space with them, when you would potentially test, and how many times you would test. Like, I even had my other podcast, Dates and Mates, um I had an NP who's been actually on the COVID front lines,
Wow.
and he was saying, like, you need to test and then wait 5, 7 days and then test again. And it has to be a PCR test, not a rapid test. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to make it? But somehow people are making it. And we've just pivoted. Funny enough, on that show, I predicted that video dating was going to become a bigger part of dating before the pandemic. I do this future of dating episode every year, and it was almost 1 year ago today that I was like, video dating is the wave of the future. I had no idea. Like, if only I had invested in some of the things that I saw coming, I probably would be sitting here having a totally different experience myself.
Wait, that is so funny. It totally brings me back to matchmaking. Like there should be like a Bumble type app that does that, or like Tinder type app with like video dating.
Oh, there
There are
are, and
now.
a lot of yeah, and a lot of the apps. I also work with OkCupid as
Yeah.
a spokesperson and dating expert. A lot of the apps are embracing video within the app, so you don't ever have to leave the app to
So good.
communicate in that way. And they're incorporating video into profiles. I've seen like a chat roulette sort of speed dating situation.
I love it.
People are really getting innovative, and that's obviously the pandemic is horrible and has affected everybody in very dramatic ways. But if I could, I'm an eternal optimist. I try to look for the silver lining. If
Oh
I
yeah.
could see any silver lining, it's that we've had to innovate,
Hmm.
both in business and just how we operate and how we connect to our customers, our clients, our one another. But I think also it's just caused a lot of businesses to have to just look at their model and re-examine what's really important,
Yeah.
what we might be able to look at in a different way. And some of these conversations I think might not have happened if they were not necessitated by the current situation.
This is true. Yeah. It gets people to like kind of cut out the BS, like the stuff that doesn't really matter anymore. Right. And I know a
Oh,
lot of people,
sure.
including myself, have been like having serious FOMO and like withdrawal, I think, from like not being able to be at live events and be in person and develop those relationships, because that's such a powerful part of, building a business. So what are some of your tips for like networking remotely or like connecting with people and growing your business relationships that way?
Well, I have maintained, I continue to do various classes and meetup groups and events and masterminds with people in my industry and in other industries that I want to learn and grow in. And it's amazingly easy to make connections this
Mhm.
way. And I feel like for a lot of people, I'm an extrovert, but I'm married to an introvert. And I know he has tremendous anxiety
Yeah.
about talking to people at live events. Like I really thrive off of that
Mhm.
energy. And I can go up and talk to anyone, but for him, it's really it's a
Mhm.
thing. So it's an interesting opportunity for people who are introverts or aren't comfortable in that kind of arena where you can connect. I have people that I've connected with in classes, and then I found them within Facebook groups and DM'd them and said, "Hey, can we have like a virtual coffee or a work session outside of class?" And I formed actually a lot of new relationships, a lot of business partnerships. I just started my relationship with OkCupid from I think it was like a tweet that I responded to from their PR manager, and then we
Love
just
it.
started chatting online, and then I was like, "We should just have a virtual meeting." And
Yeah.
then we I was like, "You should come on my podcast," which is, for anyone that doesn't have a podcast yet, it's a great tool to make connections.
Yeah.
And then we really built our relationship over time from there. So it's totally possible as long as you're looking for ways to connect.
Are you on Clubhouse?
Girl, I'm on Clubhouse. I am a
We
little
have to connect.
overwhelmed. I have co-hosted actually, with a friend of mine, Francesca Hoagie, who's another dating coach, who is just slaying the Clubhouse game.
Yep.
She does three sessions a week, three, I don't know
Mhm.
what you even call them.
3
Um,
clubhouses, 3
three
rooms.
clubhouses, three rooms. Thank you. She does three rooms a week at least, and then a couple others, and she absolutely loves it, and like, it has become a part of her daily life.
I know.
I did one with her, and I was like, "I really enjoyed it, but I cannot, like, post up on Clubhouse all day right now." So,
I know it's a lot.
I don't know.
And what's your Clubhouse handle? So if people are single and they want
Oh
to
my
follow you,
gosh,
or
I
like,
don't even know. I'm, like, never there. I guess Damona
sorry, I'm putting you on the
Hoffman.
spot.
Don't follow me on Clubhouse. I don't know what I'm doing. I know I'm still trying to figure out TikTok, and because I'm a video person, like I've hosted
Yeah.
TV shows, and I do a lot of television. People are like, "You should do more videos. You should be on TikTok." And I'm like, "I can't figure out another piece of technology." It's been a big lift. All of the technology that we have. I think I'm just at Damona Hoffman. Everything is at Damona Hoffman.
Yep.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Damona Hoffman. That's where to find me.
I love Clubhouse. If you guys want to join me on Clubhouse, I'm at Tracy Matthews. Same thing, just my name. But I love it. I was just
I want to
curious.
hear your tips on Clubhouse now.
Well, I mean, I still am kind of figuring it out, but I'm trying to do like engage or at least participate in at least one room a week. Like that's not what I have bandwidth for now. But I'm actually going to start a Clubhouse club for creatives rule the world and continue these conversations. Like I've partnered with some friends of mine who are also support product-based businesses, and we've done Clubhouse on e-commerce. Like I go to this branding session. I speak on stage at a branding session on Sundays. So it's fun. I think it's fun for now because I think people are just figuring it out. It's like when TikTok was new or Instagram was new, it's kind of like the wild, wild west, but also a great way to network and develop some business relationships. So with that being said, what are some like just top tips for designers and makers who are trying to virtually create those relationships? And I want to point out one thing, because I feel like this virtual connection tool is like a great thing for the introverts that you mentioned earlier, like your husband,
Mhm.
who get terrified of like meeting people in real life. So or they don't like feel maybe they're not as they're shyer or not as outgoing. So I'd love to hear some of your tips that you have specifically.
So for networking in general, like whether it's in the virtual space or offline, I always tell people don't lead with the outcome. Really
Mm-hmm.
focus on the connection
Yeah.
first. And I always say I'm playing the long game. Like when I gave you the Okay Cupid example, I can also give you an example of when I connected with my producer at FreshBooks. We were at a podcasting conference. He had said that he was looking for a host for this podcast, and I was like, "Well, that's probably not me." Like I'm, I assumed because FreshBooks is cloud accounting
Mm-hmm.
solutions. I was like, "I'm not an accounting person. I'm just an entrepreneur, so they're not looking for me." But he had invited me to a networking dinner. I didn't know anybody there. I was just like, okay. I wasn't like trying to get the
Yep.
the job hosting the podcast. I was just like, well, that sounds interesting. I tend to ask myself, is this something that I want to do? Like, does this
Mm-hmm.
sound interesting apart from whatever outcome could come? Is this interesting? Yes, I might meet some other podcasters. I might connect with FreshBooks, and who knows how I might be able to interface with them in the future. And dinner, like I get to eat dinner. So that's great. I love dinner. I love food. Um, and when I'm there, I really try to be present and engaged in active listening. Sometimes I find that when you go to networking events, everybody is just like, who are you? What do you do? It's
Mm-hmm.
so outcome
Yeah.
focused. And I just don't even think about the outcome. I just think of how can I really connect with this human? And then over time, I find that we can figure out ways that we might be able to collaborate, but
Mm-hmm.
it's never ever my intention. Like I want to get to know that person because I think they might be a stepping stone to X.
You are like speaking my language, girl. Like, I love that. And you know why? Because there's nothing more icky to me when someone's like, oh, there's so and so, and I want to go meet that person. And then they just like beeline over to them to like do the agenda or the thing. Like, I'm really, like, personally, I'm a total extrovert and like 95% extrovert, probably like you. I love talking to people. I love getting to know people, but I like just getting to know people to know them. Like, I'm not using that as like another agenda. And if it does work into some sort of business relationship over time, awesome. But if not, like, um, whatever, it's just like another person that you know that is part of your network. And I think this is a really powerful lesson for a lot of people who feel like networking has to be this thing where you're like always talking about business or what you do and like trying to get to some outcome. It's really just about talking to a person, and that you remember that people actually buy from people, and you never know, like if you have a natural organic conversation that leads to sharing what you do and all those things, like you might be part of their like referral network down the road or whatever it
Right.
might be. So there's a lot of ways to like use that methodology to just be like cool about the conversation and not try to like be super pitchy.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is probably basic for a lot of your listeners, but it's worth repeating. When you are connecting with someone on social, I always try to just add value to the
Yeah.
conversation. So, like with the OK Cupid example, I think I was responding to a tweet or resharing a tweet and then adding my voice to the conversation and reacting to what he had posted, and that caught his eye and then created a conversation from there. So again, I'm not thinking about, well, maybe I could
Mhm.
partner with OkCupid a year from now. I'm just thinking
Exactly.
like, oh, well, this is interesting. My followers might be interested in this if I'm interested in this. So I'm going to share or I'm going to engage. I always try to engage on Instagram when people comment on my posts. I also have people DM me with questions about my podcast or for my podcast or for my advice column. I also have an advice column in the LA Times. And I use this is like an Instagram tip specifically. I actually use the voice memos function a lot.
Oh yeah.
One, because
I
it's
love it.
easier for me because oh my gosh, are my traps, my shoulders are so tight from typing and being on the phone all the time
Yep.
that and I use voice as my preferred medium, voice and
Mhm.
video, but I love podcasting. I love talking to people. And I find that it just makes the conversation so much more real
Yeah.
than just the text going back and forth. If you could just pick up your voice memos and just say like, "Hey, thank you so much for that message. I really connected with it." You only have 60 seconds.
Keep it
So you have to
short.
keep that in mind, but that's more than enough time usually to add a voice to the name and the conversation too.
Exactly. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit. And I first of all, I love the audio tip because I do that all the time. I think it's super easy. And that's something that my team and I do also at the Flourish and Thrive Instagram. It's like easier to just like talk back and forth to someone than it is to like spend. Plus, I'm like the worst typer on a phone. Like, I guess it's because I have big hands, like millions of typos, like all the time. So I love that little tip. Um, I'm totally shifting gears though now because I want to talk a little bit about being a mom and an entrepreneur. And there's so many things to juggle. And especially for people who are moms and entrepreneurs and they have maybe a jewelry or some sort of product business where it's a side hustle right now. It's not actually their full-time thing because they have a full-time job. So how do you do it all? And what are secrets to just juggling mom life and entrepreneur life at the same time?
The secret is I don't do it all.
Good
Don't
answer.
tell everybody, but no. No, but I really don't. I really prioritize the things that are most important to me, and I outsource the things that I can, and I leave the rest. Which means I actually I've been taking pandemic photos for my Instagram of like me and cleaning the bathroom,
Yeah.
me leaving my dishes undone, which happens quite a lot. And then I have a lot of support, which is crucial for me, but I know that's not possible for everyone. First of all, like my husband and I are partners. Like I chose him for that reason. I was like, I'm not just going to be like your housewife here. Like
Totally.
I'm a boss lady and I'm going to be doing what I do. So if I'm taking time to take care of kids and raise a family, like you got to be doing that too. So we literally are 50-50 partners. And like, like last night he got called for a meeting at 5:30. He was like, I'm I'm going to be down late. Of course, we're all in the same house. So I'll be home from work late means like I'll be walking down the stairs later. So I was like, okay. And then I was like, I have to do this call this morning. So before the babysitter gets here, can you take the kids? It's a constant conversation,
Yeah.
literally every single night. And then I also I have to have a babysitter. And I'm sure there's somebody out there that is going to say like that's not safe in the pandemic. How can you open your bubble? For me, I literally couldn't get it all done. Like it is a beast parenting in a pandemic and
Yeah.
the kids I don't know who believes that kids are self-sufficient and just like logging on like adults like, well, I'll just go on to school and get my work done as expected of me. And I do have some friends who are managing to do this. I don't know what they're on or like what magic they've figured out, but my kids are not that way. They have to have pretty constant like motivation and attention. So that has been an important thing to me, and I've had to, like, carve out finances to make sure that I have pretty much
Support.
full-time, support, and the other thing I do is prioritize my family time.
Yeah.
When it hits 5:30, my day is done. From 5:30 to 8:30, I'm with my kids. I'm not on my phone, I'm not multitasking, and that is for my sanity and for their sanity and for
Yeah.
the relationship of my family, which is the most important thing in my life. That's the whole reason we do all of these other things. The
Exactly.
other thing is I prioritize my self-care. I work out every day. I didn't work out today, but I just I could not bring myself to do it. But that is for me, if
Yeah.
I do not exercise, I am not a nice person. And then maybe I haven't been a nice person today. I want to be a nice person and I want to feel centered. So I make sure that I carve out time for that, even if it's like 15, 20 minutes. That's really important to me in my lifestyle.
All amazing tips. And even though I don't have children of my own, Jason has two daughters. How old are your kids? Like what age are they?
They are 6 and 10.
Okay. So they're at a good age, but still like young-ish.
Yeah, we're still in the thick of it a little bit. We're still in the thick of it. And like, I don't know how any parents do it with more than 2 kids. Cause like right now
Wow.
we're it's one-on-one, but like I have friends that have 3, 4, 5 kids. And I'm just like, I bow down to all parents, all genders. Like
Yep.
it's just, it's just a crazy time. And we are all just trying to show up, the best that we can. And it's also given me a lot of compassion for other people, and parenting has given me new perspective. There's so many things that I was like, I would never do that as a parent. I am never going to make multiple dinners
Yeah.
because my kids are just going to eat whatever I put on the table.
No.
Good or not.
It's so funny. My friends, we were just in Utah at some friend's house, and um, my friend Jonathan has a son who's very particular in what he eats, and a daughter who has like severe food allergies, and so they literally have to make like 3 meals a night. Like Jonathan and Christy eat the same food, and then the kids have their own meals. It's like so much work.
Yep, it was a really cute idea on my behalf, but then I have one really, really, really picky eater, and I was starting to, like, think it was something in my parenting and that I had gone terribly wrong, and then my son eats everything, and so I was like, "Oh, it's not me." It's just, like, they're individuals. They're their own people.
Yeah.
And there are foods that I don't like, so I understand there are foods that she doesn't like. I haven't figured that part out yet. I haven't figured it all out yet. I literally take things one day at a time. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs can plan, like they plan out their whole year and they have like all their launches and all of their, their entire business plan for 5 years done. I am much more of a kind of fly by the seat of my pants
Yeah.
entrepreneur, which I
Totally.
don't necessarily recommend. That's just where I'm at right now. So that's one of the great things about hosting the I Make a Living podcast is that I get to learn from other people. And there have been so many things I've taken from hosting that show. And I'm sure it's the same for you
Yeah.
here, that even if I can make an incremental shift that increases either my my income, my happiness, my mental health just a little bit, it's worth making the changes.
That's so awesome. I love hearing all that. And it's so, so true. And, one thing that I wanted to ask you really is around supporting the BIPOC community, because over here at Flourish and Thrive, a lot of industries have a lot of work to do, right? And many companies are trying to do better. We just launched a BIPOC scholarship and welcomed 6 new businesses into our mentorship program that they're going to be competing for a grant competition at the end of the year. And I'm super excited. And this was in response to what things that happened in the summer in the jewelry industry with the BIPOC open letter. So I'm curious if you have any tips or feedback on how entrepreneurs can support more Black-owned businesses or brown-owned businesses.
Well, first of all, I think that's awesome and amazing.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so glad to hear that and to see that as a person of color. We haven't covered this yet, so people might not know.
Yeah.
I am a
If they're
person of
listening
color.
if they're listening to the audio, they won't see your face. So.
They won't see my face. It's brown, just so you all know. And I actually, part of my executive life was I started the talent diversity program at
Mm,
NBC. And this is a conversation that I have been having for so many years. And for so long, I have felt like I was just banging my head against the wall for a long time because I just felt like people were not open to doing the things that you're doing and having the conversations
mhm.
that we're having. So the first step is just being open to the conversation,
Yeah.
knowing that you might mess up, you might say the wrong thing. If someone offers you feedback or tells you that something doesn't land for them. I'm even learning, as a dating coach, like my audience, my LGBTQ audience has grown substantially. And there are times when like I misgendered someone on an episode and I had to re-record and I I published an apology, and I'm learning too as
Mhm.
a person of color. So it's reasonable to expect that there may be mistakes along the way, and it's all in how you handle those mistakes and how you incorporate them into your overall learning. The other thing I would say is that it's just it's really about having a seat at the table and a voice in the
Mhm.
room. And like I don't feel like any BIPOC, I'm still even getting used to that term,
I know
BIPOC.
I hadn't heard of it until the summer. So
I just feel like other folks like me, you know, we're not looking for a handout. We're not even really looking for a hand up. We're just looking for our voice to be heard.
Mhm.
And for so long, I felt like I was always told you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. That has always been my work philosophy. And you've been to my website. You see, I'm always working twice as hard, but it's it's just nice to have the door opened. And if you are listening to this podcast and you're just thinking like, wait, what have I done? Like just look at your suppliers, look at your collaborators and say, how is diversity represented? And also, who am I trying to reach? For so long at NBC, I would say, this is not a feel good initiative. This is a business imperative. Look around the room, look
Yeah.
around the world. And does this room represent the audience we are trying to reach? And if it doesn't, what changes do we need to make now to be able to be the brand of the future that we want to be that reaches the
Mhm.
customers that we want to reach?
Yeah.
It's such a big conversation, Tracy. It's like such a big
I know.
question that I feel like I can barely do it justice in the few minutes that we have, but I'm just grateful for the conversation at
Yeah.
all. And the other thing I would say is that allyship is really important. Like I have had as people of color, we are a little bit exhausted. Also, like I said earlier, I felt like I was kind of shouting into the wind for so long
Mhm.
that to have other people hear us and amplify our voices is really valuable. And I've had friends that have stepped into conversations when they felt like, ooh, this I didn't like how that sounded. Like I don't have to be the one to raise the flag all the time. If you feel like something is a misrepresentation, and you are not a person of color, use your voice because sometimes your voice does land differently for other people who can't hear mine.
Yeah, that's great, great feedback and great advice. And just one little like sort of offshoot on that for people who are Black designers or brown designers who are trying to like make a mark and get out there. Do you have any other tips for like making progress as an entrepreneur?
Ooh, also a big question. Um, One, there are a lot of programs, there are a lot of grants, there is money out there to help you um, launch or sustain your business. The other thing that I would say is really be true to yourself. And um, I this is a theme that is consistent across my dating coaching, my content that I make, my work with Fresh Books. Authenticity is really the thing that drives
Hmm.
everything. And I feel like sometimes also in the past, BIPOC artists have been encouraged to sort of downplay that their authentic self to move into the mainstream. It's like you're either doing something just for a Black and brown audience or you're kind of, I guess, whitewashing it for a general audience. And as someone that doesn't fit neatly into any box, I really am excited to embrace that there is such an array of experience and expression of that experience that is now being allowed to come forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I love what you said about authenticity and being yourself. And this is just another study too, in that like not everyone's your customer. It's just being able to speak to the people who really are, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, like the more authentically you are to you, and the more authentic you show up as your brand, um, the more you're going to magnetize the right people and repel the wrong people, and build a business, right?
Exactly. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Damona. Where can everyone find you online?
Well, thank you for having me. You can find me at Damona Hoffman on all of the socials or at damonahoffman.com. And if you like this kind of conversation and you want to know more about entrepreneurship or hear other stories, please do check out the I Make a Living podcast, which is on Apple and Spotify and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Amazing. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the show today and watching this video. If you like this video, make sure that you like it and subscribe to my channel. And also, if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you go follow Damona on all of her social channels and give her a big hello. All right, this is Tracy Matthews signing off. Until next time.